in my training as a cultural anthropologist, we focus a lot on the influence of culture on the individual. And then in studying linguistics, which is part of anthropology as well, it became very clear to me that women in our culture in America were socialized into ways of being and ways of expressing themselves that tended to be soft and compliant and sweet and tentative, never assertive. Assertive was defined as being unfeminine. And it was to women's disadvantage when they were pursuing leadership. In fact, there were interesting studies that were done that I used to tell groups that I would help train, that after World War II, women had come during World War II with so many men involved in combat, had filled many male roles. And as you know, they mostly were pushed out of them when the men came back. But one of the roles they filled was radio announcers. But the reason they were displaced and taken away from those positions was there was a lot of research that showed that people couldn't listen to the news in a female voice. That a female voice was not associated in the public mind with serious content like news, like couldn't be taken seriously. So, sometimes our workshops were called How to Be Taken Seriously as a Woman in Leadership. And it was around that, sort of really looking at, okay, what are the ways of being that we've been socialized into? And what do they mean? And how can we, and we used to videotape women. We would ask them in some of these workshops to give a speech, and then we'd videotape them. And then we would show them the kinds of patterns of speech that were very characteristic of women that reflected a kind of a tentativeness. Whether that's inflection at the end of the sentence or always saying, don't you think? Asking for somebody else's agreement at the end. And a lot of research, has been done since then on this, and men are from Mars and women from Venus, A lot of people got into this, a lot of good scholarship has been done around that, about, of course, different ways of being, but what we were focusing on was the kind of cultural impact of the socialization of little girls versus little boys. And little boys, socialized into being team leaders and into more assertive roles, and women into sort of more compliant and tentative sort of ways of being. So we made a contrast between how do you present yourself as a woman in a way that allows you to be taken seriously.